2 weeks away is the 2024 election. Kamala Harris's polling numbers keep collapsing as we approach the last stretch and time runs out. Trump is blazing in almost every single recent poll in the meantime. I'm going to fill in the map based on poll closing order to replicate how the map is actually going to color in red and blue on November 5th. Today I'm updating my 2024 electoral map projection. Voting will finish in 6 states at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The first 6 races scheduled for calls are these. They total 60 electoral votes taken together. We still have rather a long way to go even now. I would start by completing the solid states for both contenders. Donald Trump is quite likely to prevail in South Carolina, Kentucky, and Indiana. While Kamala Harris is going to carry Vermont, the most liberal state in the nation, these are all solid red states from the past 2 elections. Though, looking at 2020 results, you would be rather surprised to learn Virginia and Georgia will be more competitive. In the past election, Virginia indeed cast an amazing double-digit vote for Joe Biden. For almost 4 decades, Joe Biden emerged victorious by the biggest margin among all the Democrats. Still, based on the polls, Kamala Harris is on target to win the state by 4 points today. Given polls always overestimate Democratic support, she most likely will win the state by just 2. From 2004 forward, Virginia is more competitive than it has ever been in any election. Republicans have a real chance. Right now, Kamala Harris still has a very small advantage, thus the state will be lean Democrat on our map. Though another state Biden carried in the past, Trump is on target to win Georgia. On the map, it was the closest state indeed. He secured it by less than 0.25 percentage point. Today, though, Trump leads in Georgia by 1.8%. He is quite obviously the favorite. Though they are rather accurate, especially in relation to many of the other battlegrounds, polling in Georgia does somewhat overestimate Democratic support essentially every single time. Given the polling and past voting patterns, Trump will thus be able to get Georgia back under control. He most likely carries it between 3 and 4 points. Actually, Trump prevailed by 5 points back in 2016 in Georgia. Donald Trump will thus be early leading with 44 electoral votes following the first poll closing of the evening. Kamala Harris trails with barely 16. Fast forward 30 minutes, starting at 7:30 p.m. Voting will close together in Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Comprising 37 of the electoral colleges and 538 votes, they represent Ohio, which is where we are headed. He leads by roughly 10 points in the polling. In both of the past 2 elections, he emerged victorious in the state by 8%. First flipping it in 2016, he then carried it exactly the same margin against Joe Biden in 2020. Trump will definitely bring the Buckeye State for a 3rd trip. It is most likely Republican. He will win at least by double-digit margin. The second of the 7 battleground states then is North Carolina. Like every other one, Donald Trump leads in the polling average. He leads by 0.5, but polls here have been known to substantially understate support for Trump. He will most likely win it about on Georgia's margin. The GOP will prevail in this 3 to 4 point race. Actually, North Carolina is the only swing state that supported Trump in 2016 and 2020. With Mark Robinson on their nomination, Republicans most likely will lose the governorship in the Tar Heel state. On the presidential level, though, Trump will have too much impact from this. He practically fits North Carolina like a shoe-in. He will win the race by slanted margin. At 8 o'clock at night as well Eastern Time, we have the biggest poll closing of the night, whereby voting will finish in 16 states plus the District of Columbia together. Comprising 171 electoral college votes, they represent voting will end in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. Thus, this will be a consequential issue for both parties. Additionally, significant races are held in Maine, New Hampshire, and Florida. I shall start by first filling in the safe states. Trump will certainly prevail in Oregon, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. While Kamala Harris is carrying Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and the District of Columbia by safe margins, he's going to rule down south. Kamala Harris is still going to win Illinois, New Jersey, and Delaware, albeit by less than 7 15-point margins. We will carry on now in the Northeast with Maine and New Hampshire. 2 races Kamala Harris is somewhat favoring. By most likely margins of 7 points or more back in 2020, Joe Biden now owns both of these states. Kamala Harris obviously is not Joe Biden. 4 years ago, Joe Biden made a strong nominee. This time he would have been a disaster, but in 2020, He truly was the best prospect the Democratic Party could have produced. Though in 2024, Kamala Harris is far from the best. She is only the nominee since Joe Biden withdrew from the contest rather late. She never could have obtained a Maine nomination in her own right. We will thus be in the Northeast, where Maine and New Hampshire both have a lean blue hue. Although Democrats are still preferred here, Harris will drastically lag behind Biden's performance 4 years ago. The vice president will then carry that by a safe margin in Maine's 1st district, while the 2nd district is most likely for Trump. Down in Florida, the state is a monument to what it once was. Though today it is one of the most conservative states in the nation, it used to be one of the most active battlefield on the map. Ron DeSantis, the governor, gained his re-election by an astounding 19 points. The presidential contest is now more competitive, but Trump will be able to prevail by 7 points or above. Looking at 2016 against Hillary Clinton, nobody believed Trump could prevail in Florida. He carried 1 and 2.2. Once more in 2020, people doubted him. People assumed Biden would turn the state around. From the last election, Trump actually veers outside his margin. He will do the same today. He will most likely double his performance from previous time. He will just over 7% win Florida. One will probably find it red on this map. And last, in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has yet another strong triumph. He lost this state in the last election by slightly over 1%, but he was the first Republican to win the state since 1988 when he carried it back in 2016. For the GOP, it was a historic triumph. Actually, when Obama secured his 2nd term, the Midwest was essentially entirely blue on the map from 2012 to 2016. 4 years later, Trump changes the area, and Republicans, especially the state legislatures, now rule it. And looking at Pennsylvania voting right now, Trump has a 0.8% lead. He is definitely en route to win. The former president will give a great performance, winning a state he acquired 8 years ago. Examining the national popular vote next reveals still another indication that Trump will rule the swing states. Actually, he leads in 4 of the past 5 national polls. There has never been this before. Clinton lead by 6.4% in 2016, Biden headed by 8.6% in 2020. Kamala Harris leads nowadays with 0.9%, and every single day her lead keeps becoming smaller. Pennsylvania will thus be lean for Trump on our map as well. He is going to win by somewhat over 2 points, and given all the other states still to go, that probably will be sufficient to get him over the finish line. Of course, he is doing so brilliantly that we have other prizes on top of that. 4 more swing states remain where he is also crushing it. Voting will finish in just the state of Arkansas at 8:30 p.m. Trump obviously is going to win it. He now has 180 electoral votes. Kamala Harris is not even at 100 yet. We then have another large poll closing at 9 p.m. States ranging from far east New York to far west Arizona are ending their voting process. They total 163 of the Electoral College votes taken together. First among the solid red states will be our starting point. Apart from Nebraska, except its 2nd district, Trump is likely to win Wyoming, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska, Kansas, and Louisiana as well. Still, the surviving states will be far more competitive. Since 1992, every election New York has been a solid blue state. But Kamala Harris is on target to win it today by only roughly 13 points. Given that the Democrats, considering Joe Biden carried the Empire State by 23 points in the past election, this will be a disastrous performance. We also want Iowa gone out of the way. Trump will clearly prevail in it. He will win it barely under 10 points. Trump's lower Midwest performance will be yet another outstanding one. He will win it about on Ohio's margin. Kamala Harris then has to win all 3 of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I still have her winning Minnesota by somewhat over 2 points. She selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running buddy. He hasn't really assisted her too much. Her poll leading score is 4 points. In the past contest, Joe Biden even prevailed in Minnesota by 7 points. Walz lacks the effect Kamala Harris intended. She is lagging in every other Midwestern race. Should she lose Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, her campaign will fall apart. 3 states Joe Biden traveled through. She's already lost Pennsylvania, and she doesn't look particularly good in Wisconsin or Michigan. We'll start in Wisconsin, where Trump's polling average shows 0.2% lead. Walz most likely has helped Harris somewhat in the state since it is a quite close margin. But Trump has always exceeded expectations in Wisconsin, a state he have or sign. In 2020, he was expected to lose it by 8 points to Joe Biden. He lost it just by 0.6. 2016 saw him expected to lose it by 5 points. He won the state totally, actually. By how well Trump performs, Wisconsin constantly shocks the nation. And most likely 2024 won't be an exception as well. His margin of victory will be lean, hence he will win state. I have him carrying at about 3 points. In Michigan, another large state, this is most likely the most challenging swing state Trump will have to win, since it was the most liberal one back in 2020. Joe Biden claimed it with 2.8%, except for Nevada, which Biden won with a smaller 2.4% margin. None else was lean. Every other swing state would base decisions on 2% points or less, and thus Trump is definitely going to win practically all other battlegrounds if he can conquer Michigan. Trump did really win Michigan, although historically. His carrying percentage in 2016 was 0.2%. It was the closest state in the whole nation, and most likely will be close once more. In polls, Trump leads by 1.2%. Like in Wisconsin as well, I do have polls undervaluing support for the former president once again. Though Michigan is the most liberal of all the battlegrounds, I do have Trump winning it by barely under a 2-point margin. He will probably do well. Really, all that counts is that he will win the state. If Republicans can sweep all 7 of the battlefields, it will be a great symbolic triumph for them. Still, it will be rather close. Trump will win it on a tilt margin. Reducing to the Sun Belt, we will start in Colorado and New Mexico. In 2 races, Biden emerged 4 years ago with well over double-digit margins. Harris is going to win Colorado by just over 7 and New Mexico by just under 7 today, though. Trump is also going to perform much better in Texas than he did previous time. Against Joe Biden, he prevailed in Texas by barely 5 points. In 2016, he won at 9 against Hillary Clinton. And this time around, he most likely will win the Lone Star State by a double-digit margin. He leads by roughly 8 to 10 points in polls. Polls obviously also always understate Donald Trump. He will certainly bring Texas for a 3rd trip. Not anytime soon will it flip blue. And on the map, it's probably Republican. The 6th of the 7 swing states we will discuss then is Arizona. Our remaining state is Nevada. But Trump has also led rather significantly in Arizona. By 1.6% he leads. Another state Biden prevailed in the past election is, simply said, Kamala Harris will not be able to match his success this time around. Biden had 0.3% carrying Arizona. In less than 2 weeks, Trump is most likely going to gain 3% in the state. Arizona will reoccupy the Republican column. Trump carried with almost 4 points back in 2016 in this state. Arizona thus will also be lean Republican on the map. Trump is now 6 for 6 of the swing states we have thus far filled. Nebraska still has its 2nd district left as well. Kamala Harris is going to get it. It's going to be rather close. When all the votes are tallied, it most likely will be lean blue. Voting then will finish in Montana, Utah, and Nevada 1 hour later. Of course, Trump will find Montana and Utah solid. This is Nevada, the state out of all 7 of the battlegrounds that hasn't gone red for the longest period of time. Trump indeed won every other battleground in 2016. He grabbed Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Nevada, on the other hand, has not gone red since George Lee Bush carried it back in 2004. Here, a Trump win would be quite significant. He would be the first Republican to bring Nevada back in 20 years, and the polls do point to him will. He sets the pace at 0.8%. Like in the other battlefields, polls consistently understate his support. Should he triumph over Nevada and sweep all the battlefields, the former president will be living in modern times. Though considering its long Democratic history, Trump is on track to win Nevada right now. I will place it in the tilt Republican column with Michigan, 2 states where I do believe he is going to come out on top, just by less margin than the other 5 swing states. Then voting will finish across the Pacific Coast 1 hour before midnight at 11 p.m. Kamala Harris will sweep Washington and California by strong margins. Oregon will be rather more competitive, though. Trump will then shortly carry Idaho with ease. Kamala Harris will then win Hawaii at midnight on November 6th, and 1 hour later at 1 a.m. Trump will carry Alaska. And hence, here is my revised 2024 electoral map projection. 312 electoral votes for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at number 2 and 26. Trump will clean all 7 of the swing states. For the Republican nominee, it will be a modern-day landslide as Kamala Harris's campaign is collapsing just 2 weeks before the election. I greatly appreciate you watching. Right now, make sure you enjoy, comment, and subscribe for more material like this heading up to the November election.